Here is a number that should not be possible. If you had put $1,000 into Dollarama on the day it went public in 2009 and $1,000 into Apple on that very same day, the Dollarama money would have grown more. Not a clever trick with the dates, the actual record off the Toronto Stock Exchange. Since that day, the stock is up more than 6,000%. A company that sells $4 spatulas and $2 notebooks beat one of the most valuable companies in human history. The company is Dollarama, and the man who built it is the most successful merchant this country has ever produced. You have almost certainly never heard his name. And here is the part nobody likes to say out loud. Dollarama does its best business when you are doing your worst. When rent jumps, when the grocery bill stops making sense, when the paycheck used to reach the end of the month and now it doesn't. That is exactly when the lineups inside Dollarama get longer. So this is not really a story about a dollar store. It is a story about a machine that takes a whole country's bad year and turns it into a record year. The question this video answers is simple. How does a place that sells cheap plastic get rich while the country gets poorer? The answer runs through 3 generations of one quiet family, and it starts more than 100 years ago. In Canadian business, success is usually loud. You have the grocery dynasties, like the Westons, in the news every time bread climbs another nickel. The oil money in Calgary, signing pipeline deals worth more than some countries make in a year. The tech founders chasing Silicon Valley cash with hockey stick slides. The man who beat all of them did none of that. He gave almost no interviews, no galas, no posts. His name is Larry Rossi, and what he built in Montreal made more money for its owners than nearly any louder name in the country. But the story does not start with Larry. It starts in 1910, when a young man named Salim Rossi stepped off a boat from Lebanon with next to nothing and opened a small general store on Craig Street in Montreal. He sold the basics of working life: thread, razor blades, cheap tools. Salim's son George took the business over and grew that one shop into a chain of little variety stores across Quebec. The kind of place where you grabbed a card, a small toy, and a pack of gum in one stop. Then, in 1973, the third Rossi walked in, Larry. He inherited the family company, called S. Rossi Incorporated, and for almost 20 years, he ran it the way you would expect. A solid, ordinary chain of variety stores. Nothing famous. And he could have run it quietly until he retired, and you would never have learned the name. Except, the ground was about to shift under every store like his. The 1970s and 80s handed North American retail a brutal new weapon, the category killer. The idea was simple. You pick one kind of product, you build the biggest store in the region that sells only that. You price so low no small shop nearby survives. Then you stamp it across the map until you own the category. Toys R Us did it to toys. Home Depot did it to hardware. And down on the southern horizon, getting ready to march into Canada by buying up the old Woolco chain, sat Walmart, the category killer of basically everything. A chain like S. Rossi was caught in the worst spot on the board. It had 44 stores, none big enough to beat the giants on price, none deep enough to beat the specialty shops on selection. Retail people have a name for that spot: the dead zone. You cannot win on price because the giants can always go lower. You cannot win on choice because the specialists always go deeper. And the companies stuck in that zone do not limp along. They die. Larry Rossi could see exactly where it ended. The same place names like Eaton's and Byway would eventually end up: in the ground. So he went looking for a third way out and found it in the American South. Down there, chains like Dollar General were growing at a speed that made no sense on paper. Their trick was to strip a store to the bone. No flyers, no weekly sales, no loyalty cards, just one price marked plain on everything in the building. That simplicity threw off margins normal stores could not touch, and shoppers loved how easy it felt. Larry wanted that for Canada. His advisors swore it would fail up here. The dollar was weak, so imports cost more. Wages and bilingual label laws piled on costs no store in Alabama carried. And Canadians, they said, were too proud for a pure dollar store. Larry disagreed on every count and picked a town small enough that if he was wrong, nobody important would notice. In April of 1992, he chose Matane, a town on the Gaspé coast, on the south bank of the St. Lawrence, far enough from Montreal that nobody in the city's money crowd was watching. Rossi shut one of his small stores there, gutted it, and stripped out everything priced above $1. Then he reopened the doors with no idea what would happen. The shelves emptied fast. People filled their carts like the stuff was nearly free, and stock he thought would last a month was gone in days. And it was not only that the prices were low. Spending in that store simply felt different from spending anywhere else, and the reason is a quiet trick of the brain. Think about how you shop. A $10 item makes your brain stop and do a little math. Is this worth it? Do I need it? A $1 item shuts that math right off. The cost barely registers, so the part of you that says wait never wakes up. You stop deciding and start grabbing. That was the engine Larry found in Matane. And the magic, he realized, was never really the dollar. It was the gap between his price and what the same thing cost everywhere else. He moved fast. He tore down his family's 80-year-old name and flipped the entire S. Ross chain over to one new idea called Dollarama. The first store outside Quebec opened that same year, all the way over in Grand Falls, New Brunswick, and it kept working. By 2004, Dollarama had grown to nearly 350 stores across 6 provinces, throwing off cash with a steadiness that started turning serious heads. But Larry had hit a wall. The whole western half of the country was a blank map to him, a place where nobody knew the name, and local rivals already held the ground. Going truly national takes a kind of machinery a family team cannot build fast enough on its own, and someone with deep pockets and very different tools had already spotted that gap. What showed up was Bain Capital, and if that name means to you what it meant to most Canadians in 2004, this is the part where the story should go bad. Bain is an American private equity firm, co-founded by Mitt Romney, famous for a move built entirely on borrowed money. The mechanics are cold. The firm borrows a fortune against the very company it is buying, uses that cash to take it over, then dumps the debt onto the company itself and squeezes out profit through cuts and sales before the bill comes due. So, in November 2004, when Bain bought about 80% of Dollarama for around $850 million, the business press assumed it knew the ending. Layoffs, cheaper junk on the shelves, a good Canadian company slowly carved up for parts. That is not what happened. And the reason is the paradox at the heart of this story. When Bain opened the books, it found something it was not braced for. The margins were huge, well above the rest of retail. The customers were not just loyal, they were almost a cult, hooked by the psychology Larry had built in. The supply chain, running straight back to factories in China, was tighter than most giant corporations ever manage. This was not a sick company waiting to be stripped. It was a machine running close to perfect in a country it was only a third of the way through. There was nothing to raid. So Bain did the opposite of the usual playbook. It kept Larry Ross as the boss. It left his team in place, and it spent its energy building the one thing the family could not build alone. Before Bain, Dollarama picked locations the way every good shopkeeper does. Larry would drive a neighborhood, read the traffic, trust his gut. Bain swapped the gut for math, bringing in people who map a whole country for a living, hunting the exact corners that fit, the right crowd, the right incomes, and above all, the right neighbor. Retail people call it an anchor tenant, a big grocery store or pharmacy whose mere presence guarantees a river of people walking past. Park a Dollarama beside one, and you inherit that river for free. Bain's team found hundreds of those corners across the West. Armed with that map and the cash to act on it, Dollarama flooded into Alberta and British Columbia faster than the local stores could even react. Then came the payday. In October of 2009, in the middle of a global recession, Bain took Dollarama public on the Toronto Stock Exchange, ticker DOL, at $17.50 a share. Sit with the timing. The world was terrified about money, and that was the perfect moment to sell shares in a store that thrives when people are terrified about money. Bain sold down its stake over the next couple of years and walked away with a fortune. But here is what matters if you are Canadian. The family did not lose the company. Larry stayed at the controls, and in 2016, the top job passed to his son, Neil Rossi, the man who had spent years deciding what actually goes on the shelves. The American money came, made its killing, and left. The Rossis are still here, still running the whole thing out of Montreal. There was one threat the whole model was built around, and the recession brought it to the door. Inflation. Inflation is the natural enemy of a store that sells everything at one price. Picture how a normal store handles rising costs. When Walmart's suppliers charge more, Walmart just changes the sticker. 50 cents on a $10 item, and almost nobody notices. Dollarama could not do that because its whole identity was welded to a single coin. Every time costs crept up, from a weaker dollar or pricier shipping out of China, Dollarama had to eat the difference because touching the price risked breaking the promise built right into its name. That left two doors, both dangerous. Behind the first was shrinkflation. Keep the dollar price, quietly shrink what is inside. The chocolate bar gets smaller. The foil gets so thin it tears when you look at it. The basket cracks the first time you load it. That keeps the sticker, but kills the value behind it. Behind the second door was raising the price and praying people followed, because the moment a shopper saw a $2 tag in a store called Dollarama, the spell might shatter. So, in early 2009, Larry ran a quiet test. He slipped in a few items at $1.25, $1.50, $2 right beside the regular dollar stock, and braced for the backlash. The backlash never came. People grabbed a big $2 jug of bleach without blinking because the number in their head was not the old $1 tag. It was the $5 that same jug ran at the supermarket. As long as the gap between Dollarama and everyone else stayed wide, the magic held. It was never the coin, it was the distance. And that one discovery changed everything. The $1 ceiling had felt like the foundation of the entire company. Turns out, it was just a line painted on the floor. Once Larry stepped over it, the prices climbed in careful steps. $3 by 2012, $4 by 2016, and in 2022, Dollarama told the whole country its top price was going to $5. A $5 item in a store with the word dollar in its name. People grumbled. They felt the bags getting lighter and the prices creeping up, the same shrinking feeling they were getting everywhere else. But crossing that line did not weaken Dollarama. It armed it, just in time for a war. In 2010, the American chain Dollar Tree came north, buying a British Columbia chain called Dollar Giant and its 85 or so stores. Dollar Giant sold everything at $1.25 and nothing higher, and Dollar Tree believed that purity was its great weapon. One price, totally predictable, easy to trust. It sounds smart. In practice, that hard ceiling trapped them. A buyer who can never spend more than $1.25 on an item simply cannot stock whole sections of a store. No real tools that drive a screw without stripping it. No name-brand candy. No glassware with any weight to it. No electronics. Dollarama, after breaking the buck, had no such cage. Its buyers could put out tools that actually work. Real ceramic and glass that feels solid in your hand. Brand-name treats, the actual Hershey's and Mars, not some look-alike. Phone cables and chargers priced so far under the electronics shops it felt like a mistake. So a Dollarama just felt fuller and richer than a Dollar Tree, more like a real general store than a bin of cheap stuff. When the two went head-to-head across Canada, it was not close. Dollarama took the dominant share of the country's discount aisle and never looked back. The supply chain was locked, the pricing war was won, but the most powerful thing this company ever built had nothing to do with shipping or finance. It was running inside the head of every single shopper, and almost none of them ever felt it. When Neil Rossi took over from his father in 2016, his gift to the machine was not money or logistics, it was psychology. Where Larry built the prices and the supply chain, Neil sharpened the feeling of being inside the store into something a brain scientist would recognize, a small, steady drip of reward. Most stores are a chore, and they are built to be one. You walk in with a list. The signs march you straight to what you need. You pay, you leave. A grocery store wins by getting you out fast. Dollarama is built on the exact opposite idea. The best real estate, right at the front, is not the everyday stuff you always need. It is the seasonal stuff. Halloween in October, patio gear in June, backpacks in August. And all of it is screaming one quiet message: this will not be here next time. That message trips a wire in your head that experts call a scarcity signal. Your brain clocks that the thing in front of you will be gone on your next trip, and that little jolt of now or never jumps the line ahead of the calm question of whether you actually need a ceramic pumpkin. Into the cart it goes before the thinking part of you is even caught up. Then a second trap waits deeper in the store. Dollarama deliberately mixes in surprise stock, overstock from other chains, products with a printing error on the box, discontinued lines bought cheap, all scattered with no pattern through the regular shelves. So you turn a corner and there is a name-brand shampoo for $3 that runs $9 at the pharmacy, a licensed toy for a third of the department store price. And when you find it, your brain pays you. A real little hit of reward, the feeling you just beat the system. The trouble is, that feeling drops your guard for the rest of the trip. The tape you came in for is now riding on $20 of things you never planned to buy. It is also why Dollarama barely sells anything online, one item at a time. The surface reason is that shipping a $4 item costs more than it earns. The deeper reason is that the engine needs a body in an aisle, surrounded by cheap, colorful things. On your couch, you buy only what you meant to. In the store, you buy with the part of your brain that feels instead of thinks. And that shopper is the only one this model runs on. So what does a company do once it has quietly conquered a struggling country? It goes hunting for more struggling countries. And this is where the story turns from a little uncomfortable to something close to proud. While American giants kept face-planting on Canadian soil, this one Montreal family started shipping the machine overseas. In 2019, Dollarama bought control of a fast-growing Latin American chain called Dollar City, running the same one-price treasure hunt playbook across Colombia, El Salvador, and Guatemala. It liked the results enough to buy a bigger slice a few years later, and then aimed the whole thing at Mexico next. Then, in 2025, it jumped an ocean, agreeing to buy the Reject Shop, the biggest discount chain in Australia, with around 390 stores for a little over $230 million. A dollar store that started in small-town Quebec now owns a slice of the cheap goods business on the far side of the planet. Back home, it is closing in on 1,700 stores and still opening more, with no Canadian rival anywhere near its size. For once, this is not the story of a proud Canadian brand getting swallowed by a bigger American one. This time, the Canadian company is the one doing the swallowing. The Rossies took a peddler's pack and turned it into one of the most powerful retailers on earth, and they did it without ever leaving Montreal. But here is the truth sitting under all of it. The Rossi family made one bet back in Matane in 1992, and they never stopped making it. They bet that life in this country would keep getting more expensive, that the average paycheck would buy less and less, and that millions of ordinary Canadians would eventually need a place where a $20 bill still bought a basket full of something. That bet has paid off without a single losing year for more than 3 decades. Dollarama is one of the last places where a nurse, a tradesman, a student can fill a cart without a knot in their stomach. No card, no app, no comparison shopping. The deal is right there on the shelf. So that green sign in the strip mall is not really a logo. It is a reading on the national mood, and it glows brightest when the squeeze is worst. Dollarama does not get rich in spite of your tight budget. It gets rich because of it. Every dollar that gets harder to find in this country eventually finds its way into a Rossi store. So the real question was never how Dollarama wins. By now you know exactly how. The real question is how you feel about being the reason it does. So tell me straight, is Dollarama a genuine Canadian success story, the rare local champion that beat the Americans at their own game and then went out and conquered the world? Or is it a toll booth on your decline, getting a little richer every single year that you get a little poorer? Pick one. Tell me why, down in the comments. And while you were down there, tell me the one thing you always walk out of Dollarama with. The item you would defend to anyone. The thing you secretly believe is the single best deal left in this country. I want to read every one of them. The Rossies built an empire on you grabbing one more thing on the way to the till. The least you can do is name it. Keep your receipts close and your math closer. Next time, the Canadian brand everyone loves to hate and somehow keeps making richer. You already have an opinion on this one. We will see if it survives the facts. Until then, stay sharp.